So finally, after all these years, we get Deadpool 3, or as you would like to call it, Deadpool and Wolverine. And I'm gonna be honest. I'm a little bit mixed about it. Now let me make this abundantly clear to all you Marvel fanboys on my channel before you start a angry mob to, crucify me. I don't think this film is terrible by any means. I'm not gonna be a pretentious critic here and say I like high art or anything. I mean, case in point, I literally have a poster of this movie in my frickin' room, so cut me some slack. But there's a lot here that I feel very strongly about, I guess you could say. Now, a lot of people do like this film. A lot of people really like this film. Critics, not so much. They really don't like it, it seems like. Specifically on Metacritic, they don't like it. But I fall in the camp where I both like this film, but I also dislike it. Now, I don't want to make this long. I don't want to make this a too long of a review, because I have a lot of thoughts on it. I want to get them all out. And, I'm going to say this in the comments and also in the video. I will not spoil this film. I will not give away even the biggest moments in this film, because there are a lot of big cameos in this, and it's really cool. It's a really cool movie. It's just really messy, I guess I could say. So, I'm just going to get into it, so you don't have to be here for long and listen to me yap for about 30 minutes. So yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine, they're finally part of the MCU. So let me first start off by saying with the cameos. Now, there are a lot of, if specifically cameos, I apologize, I keep flipping my hair back. It's getting really annoying at the moment. Now, if you've watched superhero films, specifically the X-Men films from the early 2000s, you are gonna love this film. Now, me, personally, I like the X-Men movies just fine. I didn't get too into it, but I did grow up with it. Similar to Spider-Man, Once I got into Spider-Man, I got into X-Men and then the Avengers, and then, that's just how an average nerdy, geeky kid like me kind of grew up with. So, if you've ever watched those films, you will definitely notice a lot of the cameos specifically from the X-Men and early 2000 Marvel films. And it gets to a point where, now thankfully the cameos aren't just like, oh, a blink and you miss a cameo, or just like, oh, they show up and then they screw off for the remaining runtime. No, these cameos actually play somewhat of a part in this film, similar to Spider-Man No Way Home. So it's really neat that they don't just have the cameos just be there for the sake of the cameos, which is, in my opinion, why this movie kind of succeeds in a little bit. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, did I like anything about this film? Well, I love the action. The action in this film was freaking spectacular. It's probably one of my favorite in the entire Deadpool franchise, I dare even say. And by that, I just mean the 3 movies they made, So the action's pretty good. The Deadpool and Wolverine, they knock it out of the park. Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds, they are easily the best part of this film. Just their interaction, them fighting constantly, is really cool. And if you're a big fan about, Wolverine interacting with Deadpool, like I am, then this is a huge treat to finally see this on a big screen. Versus, like in X-Men Origins, but we are trying not to talk about that ever. And I'm pretty sure Deadpool even just, wants to forget about him too. So, yeah. It's a really fun treat just seeing them interact, fight each other, and just, it's really cool. And this movie also has a ton of heartwarming moments, I guess you can say, between the two. And it doesn't feel, manufactured. It feels somewhat real. I don't know. I can't quite explain it. I don't want to get too deep into it, but there are a couple of moments where I'm like, wow, this feels much more different than your typical MCU film. So, With that in mind, it's also pretty good. Now, along with the action sequences, my main issue here is the music. Now, in the beginning half of this film, it's probably the only moment where I felt like the music truly fit the film. And instantly, like, if you know what I'm talking about and you watch, like, the first 5-ish minutes of that opening fight scene, I was instantly hooked. I was just like, I'm in. I'm immediately into this film. But then, as the action scenes progressed and they just kept on, using songs and pop music, I was just like, it doesn't fit, but at the same time, I don't care because it's Deadpool. So, it's a weird mix. So, there's a lot here that I like. So, let me get to the dislikes here because there's a lot here that I like, and I've pretty much just named, like, the big likes. Now, let me name, like, one of the major issues with this film. Like I said, the biggest reason why this movie really just hurts, I guess I could say, like, just really just kind of bogs the film down, is its plot. There is a whole lot of plot. And I know, like, in interviews, the director and even Ryan Reynolds said, like, we're not trying to make this like homework. I'm just gonna say it. Technically, to watch this film, you're gonna need a crap load of homework. Like, you need to at least know most of the X-Men films, a general idea of the MCU, and even a general idea, or at least the first 2 seasons of Loki. You're gonna have, those are just like, granted they explain most of it, but when they get really into it and just really just start over-explaining, I'm just like, okay, like, those of us that watch the show already know this, and the people that just want to watch this film because it's a third Deadpool movie probably don't care because they just want to watch that. But, so it kind of bogs the film down a little bit, quite a bit, I would say. And like I said with the pacing, like, the first 90, this movie's 2 hours, so it's not even like the first 90 minutes. So yeah, the 90 minutes that pass in this movie, excellent. I really like it. I was hooked. But then, this is where the issues start. In the end, now, if you've seen the trailer or even remotely any footage, you are aware of the Deadpool core showing up and Lady Deadpool. Well, and then you get like a really cool fight sequence, but if you think about it in terms of the story, as cool as the fight sequence is, and as much as you're probably just, just creaming your jeans, just watching it on the big screen, if you just think about it for 2 seconds, the fight they have is it's just a roadblock. Like, it serves no purpose to the plot, in my opinion. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, I just feel like it serves no purpose to the plot. And then a certain character pops up, and they're just like, oh, okay, perfect, you're good to go. And then they continue. And this brings up to my next point, because after that whole sequence, Deadpool literally goes like, okay, let's up the stakes a little bit. This movie has no stakes. I'm just gonna say it. Never once did I feel like, oh, Deadpool and Wolverine are in danger. They are gonna die. Like, even in the end, I was just like, yeah, they're not gonna die. Even though they're framing it as like, okay, something's gonna happen, I'm still just kind of going like, oh, like, they barely got hurt throughout the movie. Sorry if this seems a little bit spoilery. I can't speak right now. But, it just seems like, okay, there's little to no stakes to this. And I'm just gonna change the subject here a little bit, but this brings up another big issue I have. In the end, even though it references a lot of MCU films, by the end, they're still in the same universe. They don't go to the MCU. They briefly they're trying to save Deadpool's universe, essentially. And by the end, it just seems like, okay, he just joined the MCU. So it just feels like, Marvel just went like, okay, well, we own Deadpool, we want to make a third movie, so how are we going to do it? Oh, let's just include him in the MCU. If you watch the MCU, God forbid you watch all 50 MCU films and TV shows, if you're that psychopath, if you think about this for 2 seconds and you go from, the MCU to Deadpool and Wolverine, you are now hit with the reality button that not only do you have to watch all X-Men movies and Deadpool movies to technically get this film, it just feels weirdly structurally just like a Hail Mary. It feels like Marvel is basically pulling a Hail Mary because they know, look, we need to, do something about our franchise. And it just feels like a cheap move, in my opinion, where it's just like, hey, it's cool, you got him in the MCU, but why? It feels like they don't answer the question of, like, why. Like, I don't even feel like Wolverine and Deadpool might even show up in future MCU projects. That's how I'm just like, okay, why? Why did you include them? What's the point of all this? So, yeah, just the lack of stakes in this film just drags it down. The pacing's a bit wonky, as cool as most of the moments are, if you think of, it's just the most messy, like, best way I can explain it, it's like this is what Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness should have been. This is truly a Multiverse of Madness film, even down to the point where they even kind of critique it and go like, oh yeah, we need to stop with the multiverse, only to do the exact same thing. Like, it's like, okay, come on now. But yeah, and the fourth wall breaks in this film are mostly hit and miss. They're pretty good for some of the time, but other times I'm just like, okay, like I get it, but it's funny, it's Deadpool, I let it slide. But yeah, I know, like, this is going on for a long time. I'm just trying to get out the negatives, and I know this video is running a little long, so now that I got that out of the way, let's just kind of conclude this as somewhat neatly as possible. So with the very strong positives and the very big negatives, is this the MCU game changer or savior, as most would claim? Is this truly MCU's best film or Marvel's best film in years? Because a lot of people seem to be saying that. All I'm going to say to those statements, I say
no.
There is so much wrong with this film, and most of the critiques are very much valid, but at the same time, I don't care, because the positives are really high here. Like, there is a lot here that I truly do like about it. I truly do like this film, but there are a lot of negatives with it. Now, in terms of a threequel, if I had to rank it between the other two Deadpool movies, I'd say this is tied with number 2 as being the worst. I want to say this is the worst one by far, but I really like, what this film did versus what number 2 did. But just for the sake of it, I'm just going to say this is easily the worst Deadpool film, but that's not saying a lot. So, just to wrap this all up in a really somewhat messy, neat bow, similar to the movie, is this film pretty good, despite its many issues? Yeah, I'd say it's a pretty good movie. It's a huge thumbs up for me. I really enjoyed it. Anyway, sorry it's a little bit longer review than normal, but you know what? I truly did like this film. There's a lot here that I really like, and a lot here that I truly dislike about it. But it's still a good movie nonetheless. I recommend it. Go see it if you haven't, if you can, if you're old enough, for obvious reasons. But yeah, I'd go see it. Anyway, that's about it. See ya.